Welcome everybody to our annual ALD Connect meeting. I'm delighted to welcome you in this virtual format. I'm here to kick off this exciting meeting and tell you what has been happening in the last year. ALD Connect in 2020, it has been a year like no other. Just a year ago, we were together in 2019 in Boston with in close contact with each other, face-to-face, meeting in person. And just now, a year later, we are in a situation where we're, due to a COVID-19 global pandemic, there is social distancing in place, and we're wearing face masks, and now we have to resort to formats like this Zoom meeting. Nevertheless, this has not impacted our growth. As a matter of fact, we have close to 500 registered participants to this meeting from 35 countries. And so this comes to show that really ALD Connect is doing what it's supposed to do. So what is ALD Connect? It is a consortium meant to bring together all stakeholders that are interested in making progress for patients with adrenoleukodystrophy. So this is not just a physician organization or an advocacy organization for patients alone, but really meant to be for everyone who wants to improve medical care and health outcomes for patients with ALD, share knowledge, raise awareness, and improve education. Ultimately, we aim to revolutionize care for ALD and ultimately enable a cure. Who is part of ALD Connect? There are many academic institutions around the world, from California to the Netherlands, advocacy organizations from Europe and the US, and importantly, each one of you. Who runs ALD Connect? Here's the board of directors. It's a mixture of patient advocates and physician scientists, and each brings their own talent and perspective to the board. We were sad to lose Jen Farmer, who went back to her obligations in another advocacy organization, but we gained Timothy McGuire, who's a very passionate patient advocate. An important addition has been our new executive director, Kelly Mietnen, who has really helped connect all the stakeholders in this field and improving communication among scientists, advocates, patients, families, and importantly, industry. A year ago, the Myelin project merged with ALD Connect, and this was a very important merger which came very naturally due to a shared vision among these two organizations. The Myelin project had originally been founded by Augusto Odoni, who together with Hugo Moser developed Lorenzo's oil. Although this treatment did not halt cerebral disease of his son, the legacy of this collaboration, namely of patients and physicians working together, that lives on in ALD Connect and is really an important ingredient of our consortium. So partnerships and relationships are important to support the ALD community. The peer mentor program connects individuals with ALD, family members and caregivers with ALD Connect mentors so that they can have relationships and find support and encouragement. There are other partnerships that ALD Connect has engaged in to support the ALD community. A wonderful event that the Adler family put together with Keith Van Haren at Stanford, and due to COVID-19 had to become a special online version of a family weekend camp at home, and really exemplary for how you can support families in need during these difficult times. Patient learning academies before COVID-19 really helped patients learn why clinical trials are conducted and what it takes to run a clinical trial. And likewise, physicians, scientists, and industry members learned from patients and families what's meaningful and important to them. During COVID-19, we have had to adapt into another format and conduct webinars. One of the first ALD Connect webinars was on transplant and life after transplant by Troy Lund. Rehabilitation for men with AMN conducted by Jen Keller at Kennedy Krieger have all been helpful in supporting patients during these times. So what progress have we seen in the past 5 years? Newborn screening has expanded in the US. We've seen many of these webinars come for the community, but importantly, gene therapy trials conducted by many people on the board, as well as multi-center trials for AMN. And we've built an industry advisory council and helped close the gaps towards trial readiness through a grant that we recently received called GLIA CTN. And we're trying to further make progress in collaboration with many other organizations. I'm now going to briefly step back and explain briefly what ALD is, since there might be many of you on the Zoom call who are new to this community and new to ALD Connect. Adrenoleukodystrophy is a single gene disorder due to defects in a peroxisomal half transporter called ABCD1. This leads to elevations in very long chain fatty acids that can be detected at birth. But importantly, there are different phenotypes and manifestations that arise. There's a high risk period for cerebral ALD between the ages of 4 and 10. And beyond that, the most common phenotypes are those of adrenal insufficiency and of a spinal cord disease called AMN. We also know that women can develop manifestations very similar to those seen in men with AMN. As I mentioned before, newborn screening is possible and has rolled out over the past decade in large part due to the legacy of Hugo Moser, who developed the screening method, and then the tireless work of Elisa Seeger, who has helped roll this out across the many states in the US. It's really been a huge amount of work on the part of patient advocates. What has, however, emerged with this is that the need to develop new treatments for the many different manifestations of ALD and AMN. We know that there is current treatment for the adrenal insufficiency with corticosteroids, and that we have treatments such as bone marrow transplantation for cerebral ALD. There is an ongoing trial using ex vivo lentiviral gene therapy for cerebral ALD as well, and a completed trial for AMN. But there are many other treatments that are still in the works and in the preclinical phases that we want to help bring about. Importantly, we're still lacking treatment trials for women, and this should become a focus over time. So our Industry Advisory Council of ALD Connect is helping implement many of these trials. Why do companies come to this Industry Advisory Councils? They need access to patients, resources, knowledge, and ALD Connect, in turn, needs the complementary knowledge that manufacturers of drugs have. They can provide regulatory guidance and also financial support. During COVID-19, we've had to really adapt many of our clinical trials, and I tip my hat to many of the coordinators across different institutions who've had to reschedule visits that were canceled due to COVID-19. We often had to ship drugs to patients, reschedule remote monitoring visits, put in budget amendments, and adapt. So this has been a lot of effort, but in the end, we were able to complete a worldwide AMN trial despite the COVID-19 restrictions. And you can see here the many countries and cities that and sites that participated in this MIN-102 trial. So despite COVID-19, there has been a huge growth in many patients reaching out to centers such as ours. And this just shows the experience at Massachusetts General Hospital, where we've had many MRIs from around the world be sent to us. And we've also had a steady increase in the number of patient visits. You can see that 2020 has not completed yet, and we already have more than 120 visits of ALD patients this year. Many of these visits have had to be virtual visits using telemedicine, and across the specialties of pediatrics and neurology, we've seen a surge in virtual video visits that has really allowed us also to see families in their home setting and do things that has made life easier for family members seeking care, often in very remote parts of the world. So what is missing and where do we go from here? We know that we can perform newborn screening and detect the gene defect at birth. We have early trials underway for cerebral ALD in the early stages. However, we don't know of an effective treatment for AMN yet. We have trials underway, and we don't have treatments for adult cerebral ALD or for the advanced cases of cerebral ALD in childhood. So these are still important gaps. Also, girls who are born are detected by newborn screening, and as they grow up, they often will develop a myelopathy in adulthood, and they develop movement disorders. So we need to understand this biology better and develop new treatments for them. For the early stages of cerebral ALD, we have an ongoing trial using ex vivo lentiviral gene therapy. This is based on correcting autologous stem cells from the bone marrow that are transduced ex vivo with a lentiviral vector delivering a healthy copy of ABCD1. We've treated up to 45 boys so far with this in this trial. And importantly, 10 of them are more than 5 years out from this treatment. For advanced cerebral ALD, it has been a lot more difficult, but Troy Lund has recently shown a nice paper that it is possible to safely administer intrathecal mesenchymal stem cells in advanced cerebral ALD. This was not successful in halting disease progression as shown on the right, but it is important proof of concept that there is important need here, and these kinds of efforts should be applauded, and we should understand how to conduct trials in this population. There are studies underway by Johannes Berger and a group in Vienna on understanding how macrophages could be manipulated and to upregulate ABCD2 using HDAC inhibitors. This might be another form of approach that could be employed in boys with advanced cerebral ALD. We are developing new biomarkers such as plasma neurofilament light chain. Work by Mark Engelin in Amsterdam has shown that these plasma neurofilament light chain markers track disease severity and rise over time. And Johannes Berg and Wolfgang Köhler have shown that this marker is even tenfold elevated in childhood cerebral ALD. So really inviting ideas about conducting trials in a more rapid manner. New treatments are underway and being developed. Tom Scanlon has developed work using a thyroid hormone receptor agonist that in a mouse model of ALD has been shown to lower very long chain fatty acids in spinal cord. And he's gone further to develop a form of this salbidarome that has increased CNS penetration. This has now been taken up by company called Audubon, planning to institute trials in AMN. My group and others are optimizing AAV-mediated gene therapy for adrenal myeloneuropathy. We have figured out how to target the cell types in the spinal cord that require ABCD1. This lowers very long chain fatty acids in this compartment. And we have recently understood what what cells need to be targeted to improve behavior as well. Along those lines, we now understand that myelopathy requires a new way of thinking about quantitative performance. Mark Engelin and his group have shown that using a force plate, you can assess amplitude sway with eyes closed and feet apart and together. And Neha Godbole in my group has also, together with the vestibular lab, explored changes to surface as well as visual perturbation to bring out the symptoms of a myelopathy. And this will allow us to accelerate trials in the future. Importantly, women have for many decades suffered from pain, discomfort, and movement disorders that have not been well understood. Although in the first ALD pedigrees described in the last century, women with torticollis were mentioned again and again. It is only now that we are starting research to fully understand this. And this is work by Melanie Supnet and Nutan Sharma at MGH. And John Winkelman is helping us understand restless leg syndrome that troubles so many women with ALD. Towards clinical trial readiness, we have been able to create a consortium with Adeline Vanderver and Ali Fatemi, myself and Josh Bankowski and many others. And I think this is really going to lead the way in terms of standardizing outcome measures very much needed for the ALD and AMN community. So what gaps have we closed and what are we missing? We've been able to award a GLIA-CTN pilot grant to help Eric Malik develop measures for monitoring newborns after diagnosis. Mark Engelin has put together a Delphi method for international consensus around standardizing care guidelines. I mentioned biomarkers. You'll hear today from Patricia Mussolino and Eric Malik about MRI measures. Wearables are being pioneered at the KKI at Hopkins, and many new trials are coming about. However, we are still seeing disparities in access to diagnosis and treatment. We don't have treatment for women. We need to understand how to interact with NIH and FDA to expand access efforts and opportunities. Disparity in medicine isn't an abstract notion. It happens all around us every day. Here, a silent vigil that was held at MGH after racial violence that moved and disturbed all of us, and really pointed to the fact that the disparities during COVID-19 are clearly there and aggravated by socioeconomic aspects and racial and ethnic disparities. This is happening in ALD as well, and we need to pay attention to it. In the end, I think we will all prevail because the patient community really understands the power of working together, and families collaborating and supporting each other impresses me every year. And we can see here a man who ran a marathon to raise funds for ALD research, and other families who are really fundraising together, educating the public together. And this is going a long way. So I want to acknowledge first and foremost all the families not only participate in trials, but really go all the way in terms of helping each other and support also us researchers and point us to what is important in how we're spending our time to make a difference for this disease. So a big thanks to all of them. And of course, a thank you to all our sponsors who have made this event possible and are really making this, annual event an important event that brings people together from all over the world. So a big thank you to them, and also for you to participate. If you're not, if this is your first meeting of ALD Connect, please get involved. Please feel part of this growing community, and I think you will enjoy it. So thank you.